Archaeologists often find the remains of ancient warriors with horrific wounds from swords and spears. We've grown accustomed to thinking that enemy weapons were the primary threat in antiquity, but the reality of the Roman army's long campaigns was far more terrifying and mundane. Often, the real killer of legionnaires was simply a winter's sleep on the cold ground. The Roman army spent enormous resources on logistics and equipping its soldiers. However, when temperatures dropped below freezing, even this advanced military machine began to falter. A modern person would hardly survive even a couple of nights in such conditions. Yet the Romans didn't just survive in that icy hell, they managed to win. Today we'll talk about how sleep turned into a form of torture. You'll learn why a shield was more important than a mattress, and how a campfire could be a death sentence. It sounds crazy, but that's exactly how the greatest empire in history was built. Let's examine the brutal truth about the winter sleep of an ordinary Roman soldier. Imagine a typical war hundreds of years before our era. The first snow falls and armies literally disperse to their homes to wait out the bad weather. Fighting in winter was considered outright suicide even for the wildest northern tribes. But the Romans decided that the rules of logic were invented exclusively for weaklings. Why did heavy military campaigns continue even in the bitterest cold? Roman generals realized one brilliant and incredibly cruel thing. If the enemy is certain you won't come because of the snow, then they aren't ready for battle. Winter was the best time for the most massive and unexpected attacks. The barbarians left their borders unguarded and relaxed by warm hearths. They sincerely believed that nature itself would reliably protect them from the Roman legions. And then, on the horizon, would appear frozen but very angry men in red tunics. The element of surprise worked flawlessly and shattered the fighting spirit of any enemy. Modern armies use snowmobiles and heated helicopters for such winter maneuvers. The Romans relied only on their own feet and the phenomenal tenacity of their commanders. Marching knee-deep in snow demanded an incredible expenditure of calories and strength. Legionnaires expended more energy battling the climate than on the battle itself. Commanders were well aware of the enormous risks of such winter campaigns. Losing half the army to widespread frostbite was a very real possibility. But the strategic advantage of a surprise attack outweighed any human losses. The Roman mathematics of war were always utterly ruthless toward ordinary people. To keep the army moving, soldiers had to literally cut roads through the snow. Engineering units marched ahead, spending hours clearing the way for the main forces. My back and arms start to ache just thinking about such shovel work. And after that, the legionnaires still had to fight. Logistics in winter turned into a veritable nightmare for ancient supply officers. Heavy supply trains got stuck in the mud, and horses and mules died en masse from exhaustion. Soldiers often had to carry double rations on their own shoulders. The weight of the equipment carried could reach 40 kilograms per person. Modern tourists complain if their backpack weighs more than 15 kilograms. They have membrane jackets, lightweight thermal underwear, and comfortable hiking boots. A Roman carried armor, weapons, food, and wooden stakes for the camp. At the same time, he wore leather sandals with iron spikes on his feet. Caligae, the famous Roman sandals, were perfect for marching over dry rocks. But on ice and in deep snow, they turned into a veritable ice torture. Soldiers stuffed them with sheep's wool and straw to try to stay warm. It was the ancient equivalent of winter boots, made from scraps and sheer desperation. It is not the army that shouts the loudest or looks the most impressive that wins. It is the one capable of surviving a cold night and waking up ready for battle. The Romans made endurance their main secret weapon on the path to world domination, and winter marches were the perfect tool for putting that endurance to the ultimate test. Imagine you've marched 30 kilometers through a biting, freezing wind. Your body is completely exhausted, your feet are rubbed raw, and your stomach is crying out for hot food. In the modern world, you would take a shower and lie down in a soft bed. A Roman soldier had only the bare earth, frozen solid as stone. The legionnaires' leather tents were incredibly heavy and required considerable strength to set up. In winter, they often got soaked from the snow and then froze in the biting wind. But even if they managed to set up the icy tent, It didn't offer much protection from the cold coming up from below. The ground drew heat from the exhausted body much faster than the freezing air. Sleeping on frozen ground without proper insulation is a sure path to death. Physicists call this process conductive heat loss by the body. The human body heats the ground, but the ground is endlessly cold and simply absorbs all the energy. The Romans did not know the laws of physics, but they knew perfectly well that this would kill them. Digging a proper sleeping pit in the frozen ground was practically impossible. Ordinary shovels and pickaxes simply bounced off the icy crust with a clang. They had to make do with the meager relief provided by nature itself. Sometimes exhausted legionnaires slept right in the mud, which froze solid by morning. To insulate themselves from the cold in any way possible, the soldiers used branches and dry leaves. They created a thin but vital layer between their bodies and the icy surface. Modern survivalists use high-tech foam mats for this purpose. The Romans used thorny bushes, which they had to cut down in complete darkness. Chronic sleep deprivation wore down the body faster than meager field rations. When a person cannot warm up, their brain physiologically prevents them from falling into deep sleep. Soldiers were constantly waking up from painful muscle spasms and uncontrollable shivering. It was an endless nighttime ordeal, somewhere on the border between reality and a nightmare. The frozen ground forgives no mistakes and never lets you relax your back. Every small stone and every icy bump mercilessly dug into the body. In the morning, the soldiers woke up with unbearable pain in all their joints and spine, and yet they had to pick up their heavy shields again and go out to kill. Deadly fatigue accumulated with each passing day of the winter campaign. At some point, a soldier would stop thinking and act on reflexes alone. Deep exhaustion killed just as often in ancient warfare as enemy arrows. A man would simply collapse into the snow from exhaustion and never get up again. Modern research shows that sleep deprivation is equivalent to mild alcohol intoxication. Reaction times slow down, and the ability to make sound decisions drops to nearly zero. Now imagine an entire army of such drunk, armed men deprived of sleep, and they had to be commanded somehow in the midst of real, bloody combat. Strict discipline remained the only glue holding this system together. Experienced centurions used sticks to force exhausted soldiers to get up from the frozen ground. It sounds incredibly cruel, but that is exactly how they saved their lives. Anyone who gave up and remained lying in the cold was guaranteed to die in their sleep. An ordinary Roman legionary did not have a down jacket made of modern membrane materials. His main and often only protection against the cold was the military sagum. It was a simple piece of woolen fabric fastened at the shoulder with a metal fibula. It looks stylish in historical films, but in reality, it was just a rough blanket. Sheep's wool has one amazing natural property. It continues to retain heat even when it gets completely soaked with snow. Ancient weavers didn't know the chemistry of polymers, but they created the perfect material for survival. The sagum literally saved entire legions from mass frostbite and torrential rain. This camping cloak was heavily soaked in animal fat to make it waterproof. The smell of such a woolen garment was simply repulsive and pungent, but drops of icy water rolled right off it without penetrating at all. It was an ancient waterproof jacket with the taste and aroma of rancid lard. At night, the thick sagum became the legionnaire's only sleeping bag. The soldier wrapped himself tightly in it, trying to seal every gap against the icy wind. He had to breathe into the cloak so that the precious warm air would remain around his body. It looked like a giant, stinking cocoon thrown onto the frozen ground. The main problem was that the sagum did not completely cover an adult man's legs. Calves and feet were often left completely exposed to the biting, frosty wind. Soldiers had to pull their knees up to their chests, assuming the uncomfortable fetal position. Only in this way could they preserve even the meager crumbs of vital warmth. A modern winter sleeping bag easily maintains a comfortable temperature down to -20 degrees. The ancient sagum could barely cope with a slight sub-zero temperature in the complete absence of wind. Therefore, sleep was always short and fitful due to constant, uncontrollable shivering. The body itself would wake the freezing person so that he would start moving and warm up. Often, woolen cloaks would freeze solid to the ground during the night. In the morning, a soldier had to literally peel his only blanket off the dirty ice. The fabric could easily tear in the process, which meant a real personal disaster. Losing an entire sagum in winter was tantamount to a slow and agonizing death sentence. It is no surprise that this piece of coarse wool was valued by soldiers as highly as gold. Experienced veterans took much better care of their cloaks than of their battle swords. A good weapon could always be picked up on the battlefield from a fallen comrade, but finding a dry and intact sagum in a German winter forest was simply impossible. When abnormally severe frost set in, a single cloak was woefully insufficient. Soldiers would put on absolutely every piece of clothing they could find in the camp. They stuffed dry straw and grass under their tunics for extra insulation. The Legion temporarily turned into an army of ragged figures, looking more like garden scarecrows. The military cloak gradually became a recognizable symbol of the Roman army itself. There was even a saying, "to put on the sagum," which officially signaled the start of war. This simple piece of wool, smelling of grease, helped Rome conquer half the known world, and it did so simply by keeping the legionnaires from freezing to death. The Roman scutum was a legendary shield that paved the way to the greatest victories. It was a massive, curved wooden structure covered in leather and reinforced with metal. It weighed about 10 kilograms and provided excellent protection against enemy arrows. But in the harsh winter, its primary function on the front lines changed dramatically. The heavy shield became the only reliable barrier between the soldier and the icy mud. When the ground turned into frozen slush, lying on it on one's back meant certain death. The legionnaires laid their scutums on the ground and lay directly on the hard planks. It was the harshest wooden bed in the history of human conflict. Wood has excellent thermal insulation properties compared to frozen soil. It does not draw precious heat away from a weary human body as quickly. The shield created a protective barrier and prevented moisture from reaching the woolen clothing. It sounds ingenious, but trying to sleep on a curved plank was a form of torture in its own right. The semi-cylindrical shape of the scutum made it an extremely uncomfortable and unstable mattress. You had to balance yourself all night so you wouldn't roll into the cold mud while sleeping. The hard wood made your back ache so badly that it hurt just to breathe in the morning. But this was considered a completely negligible price to pay for protection against severe hypothermia. Sometimes several shields were used to create an improvised triangular roof. The legionnaires placed their scutums at an angle, leaning them securely against one another. The result was a small wooden tent that provided protection from the snow and the biting, icy wind. Inside this cramped shelter, a tiny but vital microclimate was created. Modern hikers take ultralight tents made of the thinnest nylon with them into the mountains. The Romans built their shelters from 10-kilogram pieces of wood, bronze, and leather. If the wind knocked this heavy structure over at night, it would hit the head very hard. On the other hand, snow never accumulated beneath it, which could have buried sleeping soldiers alive. The expensive leather covering of the shield required constant care, especially in winter conditions. Excess moisture and severe frost could cause it to crack quickly and become unusable. Soldiers had to regularly rub their shields with oil to save their expensive equipment. Caring for government-issued weapons in the army always took precedence over personal comfort. Using the shield as a bed served another crucial tactical purpose. In the event of a sudden nighttime attack by barbarians, the weapon was literally right at hand. A sleepy legionnaire did not need to frantically search for his scutum in the darkness of the camp. He simply sprang up with it and was fully ready for battle in a second. Rome's various enemies often underestimated this incredible soldierly ingenuity. They genuinely believed they would find the legionaries frozen and helpless in the deep snow. Instead, they encountered angry armed men who instantly emerged from beneath their wooden armor. The element of nighttime surprise quickly turned against the attackers themselves. The scutum saved the life of an ordinary soldier at least twice in a single day. By day, it reliably deflected the spears and heavy swords of barbarians driven mad by rage. By night, it warded off the deadly cold of the frozen European soil and the icy wind. It was precisely this incredible versatility that made Roman equipment unmatched. In the Roman army, the most basic combat unit was always the contubernium. This was a close-knit group of 8 men who shared a single tent, a mule, and their food. They were not just random comrades in arms, but a true marching family. And in the harsh winter, this social bond literally became a matter of physical survival. When temperatures dropped sharply, 8 adult men would lie as close together as possible. They slept tightly packed, intertwining their arms and legs to maximize heat retention. The human body is an excellent biological heat generator with a capacity of about 100 watts. 8 people created a perfectly decent heater in the tightly enclosed space of the tent. Modern, tough survival instructors teach soldiers exactly the same technique. If you're freezing in the woods, quickly forget about personal boundaries and hug your comrades tightly. The Romans didn't need expensive survival courses to understand this basic law of physics. Modesty and shyness vanish in an instant when your lips turn blue from the bitter cold. It was naturally warmest right in the center of this sleeping mass of 8 people. That's why the soldiers frequently and fairly rotated positions throughout the long winter night. Those lying on the windy edge and freezing would move to the safe center of the group. It was a constant nightly rotation to save their frostbitten hands and feet. The breath of 8 large men in a cramped shelter warmed the air quite quickly. However, this made it incredibly humid, stuffy, and difficult to breathe inside. Hot condensation settled heavily on the woolen cloaks and the inside of the leather tent. In the morning, this moisture froze instantly, covering everything around with a shiny, hard frost. Sleeping in such unbearable, cramped conditions was a nightmare and physically uncomfortable. Someone was constantly snoring loudly. Someone else was tossing and turning endlessly due to painful leg cramps. If one person needed to get up to relieve themselves, the entire tent would inevitably wake up. Under such conditions, no one even dared to dream of a full 8 hours of sleep. But this uncomfortable way of spending the night brought the army unit together in a phenomenal way. You literally entrusted your warmth and your life to the guy lying to your right. In bloody combat, these men acted as a single living organism, never abandoning their own. Surviving together in the freezing cold forged discipline better than any grand speeches by commanders. Various illnesses spread at a terrifying and uncontrollable rate in such cramped conditions. If one soldier started coughing heavily, within a week the entire squad was sick. Unsanitary conditions and overcrowding provided the perfect breeding ground for ancient viruses. But freezing to death was far more terrifying than catching some mysterious winter fever. Today it seems very strange to us to share a cramped bed with 7 coworkers. But a Roman legionary thought in entirely different terms of personal comfort and survival. His main task was to live to see the dim dawn and not lose his toes. The warmth of another person's unwashed body was the most precious and scarce resource in the winter forest. It is practically impossible to defeat an army that knows how to survive in such a primitive way. The northern barbarians froze to death one by one in their luxurious warm bearskins, and the Romans warmed each other under their smelly woolen cloaks and stubbornly pressed forward. Soldierly solidarity crushed the crude barbarian force with a crushing and devastating score. A large bonfire seems like the most logical and sensible solution to the problem of winter cold. Fire provides life-saving warmth, allows you to dry wet clothes and cook hot food. But in enemy territory, lighting fires became a massive tactical risk. The fire was a bright beacon that literally screamed your exact location to the enemy. Any barbarian patrol could spot the flickering flames from many kilometers away. Roman commanders were well aware of this deadly danger during winter campaigns. The barbarians knew their native forests inside out and could navigate them even at night. Therefore, open fires were strictly regulated by the legion's military regulations. Imagine yourself in the shoes of a cunning Germanic chieftain in a dark, snow-covered forest. You are searching for a Roman military camp to launch a surprise attack under the cover of night. And suddenly, you clearly see a huge glow from hundreds of fires right along your path. The Romans themselves have painted a giant, glowing target on their positions for your strike. Germanic tribes never missed a chance to attack a relaxed enemy. They could sneak up on the illuminated camp and unleash a hail of arrows from the darkness. The light from the fires blinded the Roman sentries, preventing them from spotting the creeping enemy. This gave the local warriors a colossal tactical advantage over the regular army. That is precisely why, during important covert marches, commanders strictly forbade lighting fires. Exhausted soldiers had to chew on dry rations and sleep in clothes frozen through. Anyone who violated this strict order faced severe punishment, up to and including immediate execution. The safety of the entire vast legion was always prioritized over the comfort of individual, freezing men. A legionary's dry rations consisted of hard wheat crackers and a piece of salted lard. In winter, these foods froze solid, and they had to be chewed for a long time in the mouth. Hot bean soup remained nothing more than an unattainable dream during the long days of the march. Roman discipline demanded that these harsh hardships be endured without complaint for the sake of future victory. When campfires were finally officially permitted, they were camouflaged with incredible paranoid care. Soldiers dug deep pits in the ground to reliably hide the flames from prying eyes. Such earthen ovens gave off much less light but excellently retained precious heat. The smoke gradually dissipated among the branches of tall trees, making the camp less noticeable. Such camouflage required considerable physical effort from men exhausted after a day's march. Digging a pit in the frozen winter soil was a true test of endurance. The legionnaires used their sturdy pickaxes and shovels to break through the icy crust of the ground. Only after a secure shelter had been established did the centurion give permission to light a small fire. Finding suitable dry firewood in winter was a grueling physical task. The legionnaires had to chop through frozen tree trunks and search for dry branches deep beneath the snow. Damp wood smoked fiercely, stinging the eyes and causing violent coughing fits. This acrid smoke permeated the soldiers' clothing so thoroughly that the smell lingered for months. To reduce the amount of smoke, the Romans tried to select specific types of trees. Experienced veterans taught young recruits to distinguish dry deadwood from rotten wood. Soldiers often had to risk their lives by venturing far from camp in search of good fuel. The forest always harbored the hidden threat of a sudden attack by enemy scouts. Sitting by a weak fire in the bitter cold is a very peculiar and dubious pleasure. Your face burns from the heat in front of you, while your back is covered in icy frost from the biting wind. You had to constantly turn in one spot, like a piece of meat on a rotating spit. Otherwise, you could incredibly suffer both burns and frostbite on your skin at the same time. Often, exhausted soldiers would instantly fall asleep too close to the open fire. Their grease-soaked woolen cloaks would start smoldering from bright sparks that accidentally flew off. At best, the legionnaire would wake up to the smell of burnt wool and end up with a ruined garment. At worst, he suffered severe burns, which quickly became infected in the dirty conditions of the campaign. In the morning, the cooled ashes from the night's campfires were carefully collected and used for medical purposes. Roman doctors sprinkled them on open wounds, as clean ash has a mild antiseptic effect. They knew absolutely nothing about bacteria, but through trial and error, they discovered that it worked. Even ordinary fire waste was put to use for the sake of the military machine's survival. On the coldest nights, commanders would line up soldiers around the fires in several tight rows. The inner circle warmed themselves, while the outer circle shielded them from the wind with their backs and obediently waited their turn. Every few minutes, they would switch places in unison at the sharp command of the centurions. It resembled a strange, eerie dance of freezing but incredibly disciplined men. Fire was a common legionnaire's best friend and at the same time, his worst enemy. It saved him from deadly hypothermia, but it also drew the attention of barbarians wielding heavy axes. The art of military survival lay in the ability to find the perfect balance between warmth and stealth, and the Romans mastered this most complex art with absolute and unsurpassed perfection. The most terrifying and exhausting ordeal in a winter Roman camp was the night watch. While the other soldiers tried to keep warm in their sleep, the sentries stood in the bitter cold. They were strictly forbidden to move around or jump, so as not to create unnecessary noise that might attract attention. They had to stare motionlessly into the pitch-black darkness, standing knee-deep in icy snow. Roman armor was completely unsuitable for the harsh winter conditions of the northern provinces. The metal plates of the armor quickly froze and literally drew heat from the human body. Soldiers had to wear several layers of thick woolen clothing under their armor, but even that offered little protection from the biting, icy wind on the open watchtowers. The long Roman night was officially divided into 4 watches, each lasting about 3 hours. The changing of the guard was strictly monitored using special portable water clocks. If the water in them froze from the cold, time was measured by the stars and the officer's intuition. Getting the time wrong meant forcing your comrade to freeze for an extra hour on the wall. The signal for the changing of the guard was the sound of a brass trumpet, which echoed throughout the camp. This sharp sound was the most welcome one for the guards, stiff with cold. They struggled to climb down from the walls on stiff legs, dreaming only of a sip of warm water. After handing over their post to the fresh shift, they slowly trudged back to their cold leather tents. The tesserarius was a special officer responsible for distributing passwords and organizing the night watch. Every evening, he handed out wooden tablets bearing a secret word to the commanders of all the posts. The system worked flawlessly, eliminating any possibility of enemy spies infiltrating the camp. But alas, no secret passwords could protect them from the biting north wind. The passwords were new every day and were usually dedicated to Roman gods or great generals. This word had to be spoken loudly and clearly whenever anyone approached a guard post. If the correct response was not given, the sentry had every right to use his weapon to kill. Such vigilance was vital in the hostile forests of Germania or Britannia. Falling asleep on an important post was considered one of the gravest crimes in the Roman army. The punishment for this lapse was utterly merciless, beating to death with stones or clubs. Moreover, this terrible sentence was carried out by the very comrades of the offender in a public flogging. Discipline was firmly maintained by a primal fear of such brutal collective punishment. Such cruelty was justified by the harsh military logic of the survival of the entire unit. A single sentry who fell asleep could lead to the deaths of several thousand sleeping legionaries. The enemy could silently slit the throat of a sleeping sentry and open the camp gates for the main army. Therefore, there was simply no mercy for those who succumbed to fatigue on duty. But when the air temperature drops below 20 degrees, drowsiness becomes physiologically insurmountable. The human brain begins to shut down consciousness to conserve the remaining energy for the internal organs. Sentries bit their lips until they bled to somehow ward off the deadly drowsiness. Many rubbed icy snow harshly into their faces to keep their minds clear. Some legionnaires even deliberately stabbed themselves in the leg or arm with a sharp dagger. The sharp physical pain helped them briefly break free from the sticky embrace of deadly sleep. They had to stand upright, leaning on a heavy wooden shield and a long spear. Any attempt to crouch down almost guaranteed that they would freeze to death in their sleep without even realizing it. Before an important and decisive battle, practically none of the soldiers could sleep normally. The anxious anticipation of battle in the cold wind created an unbearable, ringing nervous tension. Men sat for hours in the darkness, sharpening their weapons with uncooperative, trembling hands. The silence was broken only by teeth chattering from the cold and quiet prayers to the Roman gods. Modern military psychologists call this dangerous state acute pre-combat stress. Adrenaline burns away the last remnants of energy, leaving a person completely drained by morning. And early in the morning, they had to put on a heavy shield and go out to fight strong, fresh enemies. The Roman infantry entered bloody battle already exhausted before the very first swing of the sword. Those returning from night watch would collapse to the ground, utterly drained of strength. They desperately tried to sleep during the remaining couple of hours before the general, loud wake-up call, but their bodies, frozen to the bone, refused to relax and convulsively demanded external warmth. It was a vicious cycle of exhaustion that only a swift victory could break. The barbarians were also freezing in the forests, but they did not have such a strict system of constant sentries. They relied too much on their hearing and chance, often falling asleep with their entire massive camp. The Romans deliberately sacrificed the sleep of some soldiers for the sake of the absolute safety of all the others. This paranoia, elevated to an absolute, saved more legions than the finest armor. The sentries were the only eyes and ears of the sleeping army on a pitch-black winter night. Their silent nightly feat was rarely mentioned in the senators' grand, triumphant speeches. But it was precisely these frozen men, gazing into the darkness, who reliably held the borders of the great empire. They paid with their own health for the peaceful sleep of the rest of Rome. Roman military armor, the lorica, was a true masterpiece of ancient metallurgy and provided very reliable protection. But in winter, chainmail or plate armor turned into a sophisticated instrument of torture. The metal cooled instantly in the frost and began aggressively drawing heat from the human body. The soldier literally found himself locked inside a personal, heavy iron refrigerator. Sleeping in cold armor was unbearable, but often tactically vital for survival. The enemy could launch a fierce attack at any moment, right in the middle of the deep, dark night. Putting on heavy chainmail in the dark with hands trembling from the cold took too much time. Therefore, the legionnaires preferred to grit their teeth and endure the pain of the icy metal against their bodies. Under the iron armor, they always wore thick woolen or leather undergarments. These were called subarmorless and usually served as a soft cushion against heavy blows from weapons. In winter, this layer became the only barrier between the warm skin and the icy iron. Without it, the frozen metal would simply freeze solid against the soldier's body. Iron isn't just bitterly cold, it severely restricts mobility and disrupts normal blood circulation. The 15-kilogram weight of the armor constantly pressed down on tired shoulders and the ribcage. Breathing in one's sleep was physically difficult. The lungs could not fully and freely expand. In the morning, soldiers struggled to get up, their bodies covered in deep bruises and painful swelling. If the armor happened to get wet from slush during the day, the situation became truly catastrophic at night. The water froze right on the iron rings, turning the soldier into a motionless ice statue. Every slightest movement was accompanied by a loud crunch of ice and a metallic screech. The enemy's keen hearing could easily pick up this sound from several dozen meters away. The North Germanic warriors wore thick, warm furs and light, comfortable leather jackets. They looked at the Roman iron men with genuine bewilderment and even mockery. The furs provided life-saving warmth and mobility, while the armor turned the Romans into clumsy, heavy crabs. But in close-quarters combat, the Roman crab easily withstood the crushing blows of the Germanic axes. Sometimes the commanders would take pity and officially allow the soldiers to remove their heavy armor at night. This only happened deep in the safe rear, behind the high walls of the main winter camp. The moment a soldier shed his icy armor felt like a true celebration. The skin could finally breathe normally, and the muscles stopped spasming painfully and convulsively. In the morning, putting on the iron lorca that had frozen overnight was a true test of a soldier's will. The iron burned with cold even through thick clothing, forcing a man to gasp for air. It took several minutes of vigorous physical exercise to warm the armor with one's body heat. It sounds like cruel mockery, but it was the ordinary daily routine of a great army. Today, military special forces use lightweight Kevlar body armor that barely cools down in the cold. They feature well-designed thermoregulatory inserts and comfortable ventilation channels for the body. The Romans meekly carried around a piece of cold iron forged by an ordinary village blacksmith. And yet they managed to march much faster than any other army of the ancient world. The constant threat of a surprise attack forced the legionnaires to meekly put up with these hardships. Sleeping in icy iron armor was the price they had to pay for the right to wake up alive. Basic human comfort always ranked last on the list of Roman priorities. The main task was to maintain combat readiness and the integrity of the formation in absolutely any situation. The bitter cold was a terrible enemy, but the ever-present dampness killed far more effectively than the frost. When the snow melted from the heat of the body, the legionaries' clothing quickly became saturated with icy water. Drying clothes in harsh field conditions without huge bonfires was simply physically impossible. Soldiers had to sleep in wet woolen tunics for weeks on end without a break. Constant moisture destroys the body's natural insulation much faster than dry, cold air. Ordinary sheep's wool helped, but it couldn't work miracles indefinitely. Soldiers developed the dreaded trench foot on a massive scale millennia before World War I. Their feet swelled severely, turned black, and slowly began to rot alive right inside their sandals. Roman doctors, the medicus, performed true miracles of field surgery on the battlefields. They could carefully extract an arrow and professionally suture a deep laceration. But against infections caused by dampness and severe hypothermia, they were practically powerless. Common gangrene claimed more lives than even the fiercest and most massive Celtic attacks. For severely wounded soldiers, a cold winter night usually turned into a one-way ticket. Blood loss critically reduces the body's ability to maintain its own temperature. What a healthy legionnaire could barely endure became simply fatal for a wounded man. In the morning, medics would silently carry the frozen corpses of their comrades out of the tents. Various colds were treated with methods that were quite specific but logical for the time. They used mulled wine, natural honey, and generous portions of garlic. It sounds like a recipe for a strange mulled wine, but garlic is indeed a powerful natural antibiotic. The ancients did not know microbiology, but they were excellent at observing the results of treatment. Due to constantly lying on wet, frozen ground, the camps were ravaged by the most severe pneumonia. A relentless, heavy cough filled the tents, driving perfectly healthy soldiers to the brink of madness. People burned up from unbearably high fevers in just a few agonizing days. No amount of iron discipline could command the inflamed lungs of the soldiers to breathe normally. To combat the dampness in any way they could, the soldiers rubbed their bodies generously with cheap olive oil. The thick oil created a thin water-repellent film on the skin, retaining a little internal heat. It was a popular ancient life hack that actually saved them from mild hypothermia. True, after that, all the camp dirt and road dust would stick firmly to the body. Basic sanitation in the winter camp quickly deteriorated due to the soldiers' reluctance to go out into the cold. Using the special latrines outside the camp perimeter at night was a very dangerous and cold affair. This often led to terrible outbreaks of dysentery right in the middle of the harsh winter. The disease wore down strong men far more than a 10-hour forced march. Modern armies typically halt operations during large-scale outbreaks of epidemics among their troops. The Romans simply placed sick soldiers in the center of the column and stubbornly pressed forward. The army had no right to stop until it had carried out the commander's orders. The strongest survived, while the weakest simply remained lying along the snow-covered European roads. The invisible enemy in the form of dampness and germs was absolutely merciless to everyone, without exception. It paid no heed to rank, killing both ordinary legionaries and noble tribunes alike. But it was precisely this brutal natural selection that forged a core of the most invincible veterans. Those who survived the Roman winter ceased to fear ordinary armed men. After an exhausting day's march, the soldiers sincerely longed for only one thing: to collapse onto the ground. But instead, they pulled out their heavy pickaxes and began building a fortified camp. Every evening, the legion would invariably dig a deep trench and erect a wooden palisade around itself. This ironclad rule was never broken, not even in pouring rain or bitter cold. Digging a deep trench in the frozen, unyielding ground was a veritable punishment. The shovels bent, hands were instantly covered in bloody blisters, and muscles cramped up. Construction took several hours of grueling physical labor in near total darkness. Modern builders would certainly demand triple pay and health insurance for this. Why did those clever commanders torment their own exhausted soldiers so cruelly? The answer is simple. A camp reinforced with wooden walls guaranteed a relatively peaceful night's sleep. Without reliable walls, the legionnaires would have had to put half their men on night watch. The earthen rampart allowed most of them to rest properly, while a clear minority stood watch. This evening training with heavy shovels also had a hidden physiological purpose. The active work effectively warmed up muscles chilled by the wind before bedtime. The soldiers went to sleep under their cloaks, feeling warm, which helped them fall asleep much faster. Ancient commanders understood the importance of heat exchange far better than many of our educated contemporaries. Chronic sleep deprivation had a massive and negative impact on the decisions of even the most brilliant commanders. A tired brain makes foolish mistakes and misjudges distance and enemy numbers. Some great battles were shamefully lost simply because the general hadn't slept for 3 days. Deep fatigue turns even the bravest man in the world into a true coward. But the Roman training system was specifically designed to function in a state of exhaustion. Long, monotonous drills reduced the legionaries' movements to pure muscle memory. In battle, they didn't need to think. Their trained hands thrust the gladius on their own. The body operated effectively on reflexes, even when the mind was practically asleep. Sometimes soldiers built makeshift shelters out of deep snow and tree branches. They dug cramped snow caves that provided excellent insulation against the icy biting wind. The Inuit build their famous igloos based on exactly the same physical principle. Snow acts as a perfect natural thermos, maintaining a slightly above freezing temperature inside. Discipline forced the legionnaires to unquestioningly carry out orders that seemed absurd at first glance. No one questioned why they had to dig a trench in rocky ground during a cold winter. The Roman army functioned like a massive machine, utterly merciless toward itself, and this incredible machine easily crushed absolutely any obstacle in its path. My legs start to ache just from reading the surviving Roman military chronicles. These ordinary people pushed beyond the limits of human capability without energy drinks or protein bars. Their fuel was fear of the centurion, pride in their legion, and a piece of stale bread. It sounds wild, but this Spartan formula worked flawlessly for centuries. Rome's winter encampments proved to humanity one crucial and indisputable historical rule. The outcome of a great war is decided not only by the sharpness of swords or the thickness of steel armor. It is decided by the soldier's ability to endure suffering that is guaranteed to break the enemy. He who can fall asleep in the snow and wake up for a fierce battle rules the world. The history of Roman conquest is by no means just about grand parades and a splendid capital. It is about millions of sleepless nights in muddy puddles, deep snow, and frozen forests. Legionnaires were not the mythical, invincible superheroes of modern Hollywood blockbusters. They were ordinary men of flesh and blood whom the system forced to become iron-willed. Their greatest enemy was often not a Gallic warrior, but a simple thermometer. Sleep turned into a daily, exhausting battle for survival at the edge of the inhabited world. They hugged their wooden shields, wrapped themselves in grease-smelling wool, and prayed at dawn. A modern person in such conditions would undoubtedly break down by the second day. These brutal but effective methods forever changed humanity's approach to warfare. Rome clearly demonstrated that logistics, discipline, and a simple shovel are more important than individual heroism. We still use the tactical principles that were born in those snowy conditions. It's just that today we do it in warm, waterproof boots and with hot thermoses